Playoffs, as Jim Mora once said. Yes, we're starting to look at the playoffs. And by the way, I just wish time would slow down, Dubsy. Like, we do a show, it's 3 hours. We're already through hour number 1. We got 2 hours left. The energy's going to be high. But when I look at the NFL season, I get so excited for the start of it because I love baseball. The summertime weather is fantastic, but September and October, probably my favorite months overall because of how much football we get to watch and knowing that we still have months left of the football season. Now, granted, in the NFL, it's the month of November. We still have December, January, the playoffs. It gets better and better. But I remember saying, Dubsy, to start the NFL season, like, remember we're in week number 1 and how great this is. Before you can blink, we're going to be in week 5, and week 8, and week 11, and week 16. Dubsy, it's going too fast for me, man. Can we slow it down, or better yet, how can we extend this football season into like March, man? Like, make it happen for me. Come on.
I'm right there with you, Donnie. I mean, Sundays just slap a little different when you've got such a nice-looking slate. I'm already looking at trying to get some hotel and accommodations out there in the Big Easy for Super Bowl week. And this is the time where we finally get to see who are the genuine threats. And surprise, surprise, the Kansas City Chiefs still remain undefeated. But outside of the Chiefs, I feel like we've really got a wide open market for the chasing pack. There's a couple of teams who are starting to play some better football. There's a couple of teams who will certainly put their hand up to say, we are fraudulent. We do not deserve to be where we currently stand. But I'm right there with you, Donnie. I mean, nothing moves the needle like NFL, Thursday, Sunday, Monday, and it's absolutely missed when we don't have it. And when we have it, we're spoiled. It's an absolute luxury. It gives us so much content, so much to talk about on the daily, and I cannot believe it. Week 11 already priming up here. It is going way too fast, Donnie, and I got a couple of tickets in the pipe that I need to keep moving north here, so exciting times.
Which is the Lions for me. And by the way, I'm not going to tell you the name of this person. I'll give you the initials, DRS. If you want to take that guy's spot in New Orleans, showtimes, hotel rooms, all of it, you just let me know, and I'll get through to this guy named DRS here. You can have a spot in New Orleans. But let's get back to the important topics here. The top 4 teams in the NFC, as goes by who's leading their division here. It's the Detroit Lions at 8-1. My favorite team, Dubsy. I have a lot of tickets in on the Lions to win the NFC, followed by the Philadelphia Eagles, the current leaders in the clubhouse right now in the NFC East. And we might have a changing of the guard tomorrow night as the two teams, the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, play. The Atlanta Falcons at 6-4, leading the South. But how about this one? Who would have said this after 10 to 11 weeks in the season? The Arizona Cardinals at 6-4 lead the NFC West. Talk to me, Dubsy, about these 4 teams currently leading now. Surprises and also expectations for some of those teams.
Yeah, no surprises from the Detroit Lions. I think they're the best team in the NFC, arguably maybe the best team in football. I think the Eagles have really figured things out. They've now won 5 on the bounce there, 5 straight. Saquon Barkley is having a career-best season. They've got the wide receivers. Jalen Hurts is playing some really good football. If Sirianni can make the smart decisions at clutch time, the Eagles are going to be a very tough out. In the NFC South, it was all about the Saints who soared through the first couple of weeks, but they've tapered off. The Bucs, they're dealing with a lot of injury concerns. The Falcons sitting up top, probably of the weakest divisions there out of the NFC. And I guess the surprise to me is with the Cardinals, Donnie. It was last week that I was hyping up the chances of the Rams. They drop a costly one for Monday Night Football, but the Cardinals are the real deal. They're playing some really good football. Not to say that the Jets were going to be their biggest test of the season, but Aaron Rodgers and the Jets were certainly looking to get their season moving in the right direction. They had the momentum, they had the motivation, but it wasn't enough. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, they're finding different ways to get it done, and they're going to be a very, very formidable side that you would not want to tackle late in the season because they're so tough in trying to play against, Donnie. I feel like it is similar to last year. You sit back watching the first half of the Cardinals saying, okay, so is this what they're working with? You get to the second half, whether they're in front or behind, they just start moving at a quicker tempo. And Kyler Murray, it's like he's back in the Call of Duty console playing the PS4. He's just seeing them well, doing his thing, playing ad-lib football, and they're winning games.
Now, I always say this too, Dubsy, like if I'm a defensive coordinator or a defensive player, Kyler Murray's got to be so hard to defend, man. You can't even get your paws on that guy. He's out of the pocket. He's throwing dimes. He's a smaller guy, but with a rocket arm. They look really good at 6-4. And Jonathan Gannon, give him credit here. That was a defense that I didn't think was going to be very good at all. Maybe a bottom 3, bottom 4 defense. They're starting to rise to the occasion under Gannon here as the head coach. I like what I see at 6-4. But if we are looking at the top 7 spots, like this is where I get excited. We talk about the college football playoff and the matchups that we would have. Look at the top 7. Lions, Eagles, Falcons, Cardinals, Vikings, Commanders, and Packers. And if the season ended today, that would be who's in, leaving out the San Francisco 49ers, who are currently at 5-4. Like, this is a top-heavy conference, no doubt about it, but certainly we are going to have unbelievable action once we get there. Again, those wild card spots, if the season ended today, 5th seed would be the Vikings, 6th seed the Washington Commanders, 7th seed the Green Bay Packers, which then if we take a look and say, okay, let's just say if the season did end today, the 49ers would be out of it. But let's include the 49ers because the Bears slipping back at 4-5, the Rams, bad loss to the Miami Dolphins in primetime football on Monday Night Football, Seahawks, Buccaneers. Those teams can make it in. But let's focus on the teams on the upper echelon. The Lions, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Packers, and the Vikings, the top 5 in the odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Because I just told you, Dubsy, if the season ended today, the 49ers aren't even in the playoffs, but yet in the odds market, they're plus 550 to win the NFC. How about that?
Yeah, and I guess the odds makers are putting a bit more weight on having that class factor. CMC coming back into the mix there as well. But taking a look at the outlook over the next month, it's Seattle at home this week, Packers, Bills, Bears, Rams. So they've got a couple of wins coming in their direction, but I'm not buying in, Donnie. You know, I think the 49ers are a strong football team. I think with Christian McCaffrey coming back into the mix, you know, it's hard to say it's not a positive addition, but I don't trust that CMC is going to be at full health, especially if you're throwing back into the firing line like we saw there last Sunday. I just think the vigors of playing week in, week out, it's catching up with Christian McCaffrey. They ask him to do so much out of that backfield, and if he's not going at 100%, I just don't think the 49ers are the same team that we're expecting them to be and just figure it out like we saw at the back end of last year. So I don't agree with the odds makers. I like the Detroit Lions up on top at plus 195. I think they are absolutely the standout. The first couple here, the Eagles, Donnie, your Eagles, they're playing some really good football. But I feel like the bettors are not jumping on the bandwagon, Donnie. Everyone wants to see Nick Sirianni fail, but I want to see a bit of success in Philly, so I like the Eagles, especially at that price.
Yeah, playing good, and you'll take another step up tomorrow night if you can knock off the Washington Commanders, with the Philadelphia Eagles are favored by 3.5 points. But let me just ask you this quick question on the Cardinals. Can they be for real? The next 3 games will let you know a lot. They won 4 straight games. They beat some quality football teams. At the Seahawks, at the Vikings, then the Seahawks again. In your mind, you see that 21-1 price to win the NFC Championship for the Cardinals. Is that fool's gold right now? Are they going to meet their maker, per se, over the next 3 weeks? Or is this a team that actually really could win that division and surprise teams in the NFC playoffs?
I think they could win that division, and they're going to be a tough out. That's the thing about the Cardinals, Donnie. I feel like this is the team that could beat any team in the NFL. I also think they could lose to any team in the NFL. They've just got that sort of intangible. It's hard to really, sort of put the finger on the button there. But taking a look at what they have coming up, to face Seattle 2 of the next 3, I like the look of that. You've still got the Pats, you've got the Panthers, and then you finish off with the Rams and the 49ers. The Cardinals are only playing better and better football. They started off a little sluggish out the gates, but as long as Kyler Murray is so dynamic out of the backfield, I mean, the speed that he's got with his wheels, one of the best arms for a little fella, I think they're scary to go against. So I absolutely think they can take out the division, and they're going to scare a lot of teams in the conference once we hit that the postseason there. So Kyler Murray, JC sitting up with the run game and getting a bit of production out of these wide receivers as well.
I look at the Detroit Lions here, have numerous tickets on anywhere between plus 375 to plus 250 here to win the NFC. They got the Jaguars on deck, basically a 2-touchdown favorite there. Then they take on the lowly Colts the week after that, and the struggling Bears. Could it be the Lions winning the NFC? Let's focus a little bit on the AFC picture. There's a lot of action going there too, right here on the early line.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
AFC action right here on the Early Line, Sirius XM Channel 159. It's Stubbs and Donnie on a Wednesday morning, breaking it all down in the NFL. We just did the NFC. Now we switch it over to the AFC, and the only unbeaten team left in the NFL, the perfection of the Kansas City Chiefs, 9-0, which will get tested this week against the Buffalo Bills, who currently sit in the second seed in the AFC at an 8-2 record. Let's start up top right away. Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, and Texans if the season ended today as the division champions here. Any surprises in those two? And also, how much longer can Kansas City stay unbeaten? Is it a matter of hours? Is it a matter of days? Is it weeks here, Dubsy? Or does it ever come where the Chiefs just run the table?
No, they're probably going to win 5 Super Bowls in a row. It's going to be the 72 Dolphins all again. Come on, Donnie, get out of here. The Kansas City Chiefs are getting set for their first loss of the season. It's coming against the Buffalo Bills, who have absolutely owned them. Call them daddy in the regular season, if you will. And taking a look at the AFC, absolutely agree with the board here. Chiefs, Bills, well, in terms of the odds, I should say that the Chiefs and the Bills stand out for me, but I do think there's been a considerable drop-off for the Steelers and the Texans if we're taking a look at the leaders of each division here. So it's the Chiefs up top, plus 185. Baltimore, scary out, but it's Lamar Jackson at those scary times, which concerns me. I like the Bills there at a nice little 4-1 number. But outside of that, I think a couple of these teams I'm not convinced on, Donnie. The Chargers at 15-1, they could do something. Joey Burrow is trying to do everything in his power to get the Bengals back in this thing. But a couple of outliers, and I do think there's a couple of other teams who maybe on the inside who should be looking towards the outside. I think the wheels could be getting set to come off the old bus not too far away.
Here's where I love to talk about the AFC, and it's perfect, Dubsy. We're doing it on this Wednesday as compared to even a few weeks back. You are going to get the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills toe-to-toe this weekend. You know who else you're getting? The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. So answer me this question. Still a long way to go even after this week. Will you start to change your opinion on who's the most dominant team in the AFC based on this weekend's games?
Absolutely. Call them a referendum spot, if you will. This is going to be the measuring stick, the full test of what we're actually working with. And for a couple of the big contenders, show me a little something. I mean, for the Kansas City Chiefs, I'll be the first guy to put the hand up and say I've discounted them all season long, saying they're not what their record is, but you're undefeated for a very good reason, even if you continue to let these teams stick around long enough. I like what I've seen from the Buffalo Bills. I think Josh Allen is putting together an MVP-type season. I think that's going to be a fantastic spot. You look at the Baltimore Ravens at 7-3, Lamar Jackson, King Henry going against the Steelers, who know how to bring you down to their level and play a real gritty sort of hardline, still knows kind of football. And for Pittsburgh, I think this is the real test that we finally get to see as well, Donnie. They're on the flip side. For Danger Russ, who's now got his mojo back. I don't want to say the term aura. I feel like that's a new term that's just getting thrown around far too lightly, but Danger Russ is playing with a bit of aura there, a quarterback for the Steelers. So I think this is a nice little testing spot for a lot of teams who are right in the thick of it as we push through the second half of the season.
What a measuring stick Sunday we have. Like, I can't wait to watch those two games play out because it can change the balance. Like, you tell me the Chiefs, like last year, Dubs in the playoffs, no way I thought the Chiefs were going into Buffalo and winning their playoff game. They did that. No way I thought the Chiefs were going into the AFC Championship game on the road against Baltimore and winning that game. They did that. No way I thought Kansas City was going into the Super Bowl and knocking off the more talented San Francisco 49ers, and they did that. So nothing will surprise me for Kansas City if they do go into Buffalo this weekend and improve to a perfect 10-0. If we're looking at some of those wild card teams currently standing right now, the Ravens as a wild card team at 7-3, the Chargers, who I love with Jim Harbaugh, 6-3, the Denver Broncos would be in if the season ended today. But let me ask you this question. On the horizon here, the Cincinnati Bengals sitting at 4-6, T. Higgins expected to be back. The chances for the Bengals to jump the Colts and the Broncos, it doesn't seem like that big of a task. Dead in the water seemingly just a few weeks ago, the Bengals. What's your prognosis for them and the chances they can actually do some damage in the playoffs if they make it in?
They really needed that one last week going against the Baltimore Ravens. So to make matters a little worse, it doesn't get any easier coming out here to the West Coast to take on the Chargers, who I think are another team who's surging in the right direction. But, I mean, second part of the question, Donnie, yes, the Bengals would absolutely scare the life out of a lot of these teams if they could somehow, sneak their way into the playoffs. If they can get through the Chargers, it doesn't get much easier the week after that. They've got the Steelers on deck, then the Cowboys, but you cannot go against Joey Burrow. It doesn't matter what he's working with. If T. Higgins comes back, fantastic. You've got Jamar Chase. The run game is there. Chase Brown has looked fantastic. And then he's got the big bad tight end in Mike Gesicki. There's just something about Joe Burrow having that dog in him and trying to do everything in his power to keep the Bengals season alive. This is the test, Donnie. I don't want to say the season is over if they cannot get the win here in Week 11 going against the Chargers, but that uphill battle, it gets a lot steeper if they cannot get the chocolates out here on the West Coast for Week 11.
Two talented teams, the Miami Dolphins and the Jets, sit at 3 wins. It'd be a tough hill for them to climb and get into the playoffs here, but there's always a chance, as we like to say. But if you are looking at the AFC Championship odds today, I got to say, I agree with the Chiefs being at plus 185, Dubsy. I don't actually think they're the best team, but I do think they have the best quarterback and the best coach. And the key ingredient here is, I keep bringing this up, yes, the Chiefs will be home for the holidays if they continue to win at the clip they are, which means they'll be the number 1 overall seed, get the only bye in the AFC. And then the championship in the AFC does go through Arrowhead, which is such a tough place to play. You see that price of plus 185. Give me 1 or 2 teams that can be able to take down the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, which is something not very many teams can do.
Yeah, it'd be really tough, Donnie. I think the odds market is spot on here. I like the look of the Bills. They're playing some really good football. Josh Allen, he's been good in the regular season going against the Kansas City Chiefs, but it does not get any easier the further this thing goes. For Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, Action Jackson, we know what they're working with. It's just a matter of, are they going to make the right decisions once they hit the playoffs and lean on that run game? You absolutely hope that they learned their lesson. I guess the outlier, the price would be the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. If they can get through the Chargers, the 1-2 punch, I think that's the value price. It comes from that game on Sunday. The Chargers or the Bengals sitting both right around plus 2,000 as the sneaky value play.
One of the best weeks of the NFL is on deck tomorrow night. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. And then awesome AFC action on Sunday. Can't wait to watch it play out. Let's talk some MVP odds next, right here on the Early Line.
together. Both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Dubsy, the MVP race in the NFL, absolutely on fire and red hot, just like the early line for a Wednesday morning in November. We're keeping the heat on here, Dubs. I got to ask you this question. Do we have eliminators this weekend? Because there's still a long way to go here in the MVP market, but Lamar Jackson plays in a spotlight game on Sunday. If he loses, what does that do to his odds? Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, number 2 and number 3 respectively in the odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook at 4-1 and 6-1. The winner of that football game, do they bounce the odds? Does Mahomes overtake Allen if he wins? Does Allen try to get after Lamar Jackson if he wins? Then look at this. Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, 12-1 and 14-1. They line up tomorrow night. The excitement, Dubsy, for the MVP? Oh, we're going to get some clarity once this weekend ends.
Palpable, Donnie. I can absolutely feel the buzz here on a Wednesday looking ahead to the Sunday slate. And I think you're absolutely spot on. With a big performance, you can surge up this board. With an absolute dud like we saw last week from Jared Goff, you can plummet down to 40-1 plus 4,000. I think this market is still completely wide open as we move into the second half of the season. Lamar Jackson, he has been fantastic, but as I've said time and time again, Derrick Henry continues to put up electric numbers, some of the best that we've seen from a running back. So I think that's going to hurt the chances of Lamar Jackson. And the closer we get to the playoffs, you're going to be fully aware of where he has gone missing in past seasons. I think Josh Allen, if they can get the win against the Kansas City Chiefs, it's going to be thanks to Big Joshy Boy. He's been doing everything and getting this offense moving in a couple of different directions, but I think he's still sitting on a little of that extra juice, if you know what I'm saying, Donnie. I don't think we have seen Josh Allen doing everything in his power, which is scary for the opponents. And for Patty Mahomes, I think the box score and the stats ultimately are going to catch up with him. I thought last week may have been that breakout game for the Kansas City Chiefs, going against the Denver Broncos. They were at Arrowhead. I think this is going to be the spot for Patty Mahomes to air it out, put up a few passing touchdowns. Didn't get it going. So I know they're undefeated. They continue to chalk up wins, and Patty Mahomes has found a way to get it done. But I just don't think statistically the numbers are going to be there to support him. And yes, Jalen Hurts, Daniels, absolutely right in the thick of it, but one will take the upper edge there as a bit of a price play. I think the Eagles and my guy Jalen Hurts, they're doing everything right now. But on the betting side of things, they are still being undervalued in most markets.
Let's have some fun with this, too, because I don't see it up here as a bet on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'll make my own odds up here. If I gave you Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as a bet, let's just say plus 100. One of those three would win the MVP in the NFL. Or if I gave you the field, which means everybody behind them at a 10-1 price, which bet would you make here to win MVP in the NFL?
I'm taking the big three over the field any day of the week.
Feels like
I do think it's right now. It's all about Lamar Jackson. I think Josh Allen is going to be the guy. I like that number. And for Patty Mahomes, I mean, if he can start to wow us and they remain undefeated, obviously that's going to get a lot of buzz the closer we can get. If they can go 17-0 through the regular season and remain undefeated, obviously that's going to put a bit of extra weight on Mahomes' numbers and obviously excuse a couple of the misses there in the old box scores. So I would take the big three for the Hunters and the field chasing Jackson, Allen, and Mahomes. They're going to have to do something pretty special and also come up with a monster back half of the season. I just don't know if they're going to have the cows to do it. Again, it feels like the Bengals are the sneaky value play. Burrow, I mean, if he could do something pretty special with Cincy, he is putting up those wow numbers, over 300 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 passing tutties on the weekly. If he can continue to do that and make the Bengals relevant with that push towards the playoffs, he's not out of it.
I think you're right about that top three, too, because it just feels like those three guys are going to determine it. We're not saying anybody behind him is not deserving of the award, but just that mountain to climb. Like Jalen Hurts, yes, if they continue to win at a high level, but it seemed like he sort of gets a knock because he rushes for a ton of touchdowns inside the 1-yard line. There's still touchdowns with, anybody can do that, when theoretically they can't. Jaden Daniels is a rookie, and we'll see how well he can play in Philadelphia. That could catapult his standing in the MVP market. But as you slide down, like guys like Jared Goff, Dubsy, just like a week ago, 5-1, 6-1 price, they're still winning football games, and he's a 40-1 price because you need the statistics to match up. And also Jared Goff gets a little bit about that Brock Purdy-ish, substance of, it's not him, it's the players around him. Quickly, Dubsy, give me a guy outside the top three. If you would have bet right now to win the MVP, who would it be?
I think Jared Goff really hurt his chances last week. He was throwing away that ball like it was going out of fashion. I think it's Joe Burrow. The Bengals would have to put together a really special run, but if they do, you can correlate that with Joey B with the bleached hair doing the Milan fashion shows to put up MVP numbers.
2 MVPs, Dubsy and Donnie. Let's welcome in the NHL Nest. Pete's back in the building. We'll cover it next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The energy is high. The time is flying here on the early line. We hit a ton of subjects already. Myself, Donnie Rightside, along with Dubs Anderson. Now we got to talk some NHL, and we need to get caught up. It's Pete Jensen from NHL.com. Pete, long time, haven't seen you, but boy, oh boy, we got some topics to get after today.
Absolutely. Great to catch up with you guys. Yes, since we've last talked, right, Utah's up and running as an NHL franchise. Hot start. They've come back down to earth with some injuries over the past month or so, but I mean, how about Alex Ovechkin looking like he's back in his prime and chasing Wayne Gretzky's goal record here and now? He's not waiting until next season. He's trying to get it done right here and now this season.
Looks like a great season that's shaping up already. And I got to tell you, Pete, because we talk a lot of NFL, a lot of college football, the NBA Cup's underway, but the NHL sort of gets put on the back burner at times on this show. But I'm watching the highlights last night from Madison Square Garden saying to myself, this Jets team looks pretty good, only to find out they win that game and they're 15-1 to open the season, Pete. Please tell me you saw this coming, please.
I did have them as a playoff team, even though some things were suggesting they might dip out. Of course, the coaching change. Rick Bowness had been around for a million years. He retired. Scott Arniel catapults himself to near the top of the Jack Adams Award race, right, with this incredible start. There's so many angles you could hit on here. There's Connor Hellebuck, reigning Vezina Trophy winner, near unflappable so far this season. And then, you know, not only for the Vezina again, which would be the third one of his career, maybe get him into the Hart Trophy conversation as a goalie. The last goalie to win the Hart for league MVP was Carey Price back in 2015. So it is possible, historically speaking. And then, yeah, Josh Morrissey is one of the best defensemen in the league 3 or 4 years running. So maybe he, with his point total being up high in the round of the top of the league near Cale Makar, like maybe Josh Morrissey enters the Norris Trophy conversation. But this Winnipeg Jets team has been dominant, to say the least. They win all different ways. They beat the Avalanche 1-0. They beat the Rangers 6-3. You know, those are two of the best teams out there.
Pete, where would you stack them up, say, against a Bruins outfit from back there in 2023? This is the fastest we've ever seen a team in the NHL getting to 15 teams. Do they have the moxie and the makeup to keep this thing going through a very, tough and physical season?
They play kind of a, lock it down style. Like they're fine playing low scoring hockey. I think things got a little out of hand last year in the playoffs when they played against the Colorado Avalanche, who were run and gun. They started playing that game. They won game 1 7-6, and then they completely fell apart at the seams. High danger chances left and right against Hellebuck. That was the way to crack them. I think if this team can stay healthy, that was the thing that really killed them last year. Guys like Ehlers and Gabe Velarde and Cole Perfetti, like their best, secondary scorers were all injured at different points in the season, and maybe that caught up to them over time. Everybody's healthy and flying high right now. So I think staying healthy and trying to navigate the possession as much as possible. They're not one of the very best possession teams in the league, but they are able of playing that style. So once it gets to the postseason, that's what they really need to focus on, being healthy at the right time, and then, controlling the possession, or even trying to contain some of those other offensive juggernauts around the league.
Some might have thought that would be the New York Jets at 15-1 through about 16 weeks of the season, let alone the Winnipeg Jets sitting at 15-1. That is absolutely incredible. Now, if we take a look at who's going to win the Stanley Cup, look, there's a long way to go. The odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook does lift the Oilers at an 8-1 price, but if we look at the top 10, the Lightning are at 18-1. So we have a lot of parity in there, but let's include the Jets. They're 15-1, Pete, not even listed in the top 10 in the odds market. What do you feel about that?
Well, you could look at any of the NHL's most surprising teams and say there is going to be some regression coming, because none of them are shot attempts percentage juggernauts. That goes for the Winnipeg Jets, goes for Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals, and also the Minnesota Wild. But then, I think from the individual awards standpoints, you can look at it and say, hey, if Ovi, carries the Capitals to the playoffs, breaks Gretzky's record, he could be in the Hart Trophy conversation. You could say the same thing about Kirill Kaprizov for the Wild. If the team falls off, but he keeps going and has like 120 points, he could win the Hart. And then same thing for Connor Hellebuck. If he wins the Vezina, he could win the Hart, or at least be in the conversation. So, yeah, I think the Jets are being disrespected in that market for sure. But I mean, even a team like Vegas has been really impressive this year. They have a stronger defense than Winnipeg. I mean, the Avs beat the Jets last year. The Oilers have unfinished business from last year. And then, the Stars are arguably the deepest team in the entire league. So that's the problem with Winnipeg. Home or road, no matter which one of those four teams they're matched up with, like, you don't really love their chances in the first round, mind you, against any of those teams. So the West is just stacked, and that's probably why they're not being considered more heavily for the Cup to win the entire championship this year.
Pete, not to make it about any particular individual, but absolutely going to do that. Alex Ovechkin, Ovi, has been playing some fantastic hockey. 39 years of age, and he's still looking like one of the young guys out there on the ice. He's top 10 in goals. He's getting assists. He's putting up points. I mean, is there any slowing down Ovechkin? And what's going to be, I guess, the benchmark once it's all said and done at the end of this year for him?
I mean, in his prime, like I'm talking, way earlier in the 2000s, he's had 60-plus goals. He's had 40 a bunch of times. Could he get up into the 50s and break Gretzky's record this season? Right now, he has 10 goals in his first 14 games. So his current pace would break Gretzky's record this season. Again, I mentioned, like, the Capitals have been playing a little bit above their heads so far, but he does have a really good centerman in Dylan Strome that he's really comfortable with, has been playing with for a few years now. And Washington just made so many low-key, sneaky upgrades in the offseason. They got Jacob Chychrun on the back end. They got a 1B goalie in Logan Thompson. They got Andrew Mangiapane. They got Pierre-Luc Dubois. Like, their top 9 forward group is really good. Their defense is better. The goaltending is stable enough with a decent tandem that I think Ovi is live here for the Rocket Richard. That other number you mentioned, the Hart Trophy, that may be a stretch here just because there is Kaprizov, McDavid, all these other guys that are probably going to score, 30 or 40 more points than him. So maybe he's not really in play for that award. The Capitals would really have to finish like near the top of the Metro, and he would have to break the record for him to be considered for the Hart Trophy. But Rocket Richard, that's not based on any voting. If he leads the league in goals, he wins that award over, say, a Matthews who's injured right now. So it's really possible.
Pete, let's look at that MVP market, because some of the names, even like the most common NHL fan will know: Kucherov, McKinnon, McDavid, Panarin, Makar. But I do see Kaprizov at a plus 350 price leading right now in the Hart Trophy odds. How good has he been so far up there in Minnesota?
Yeah, everything seems to be aligning for this guy. After next season, he's due for a new contract. We don't know if he would stay in Minnesota. Depends on the trajectory of the franchise. But this guy is absolute lightning right now for the Minnesota Wild, carrying them. They have a nice team around him with guys like Matt Boldy, the veteran Zuccarello, defenseman who was a finalist for the Calder Trophy last year, and Brock Faber, and some decent goaltending. They got 3 good options really moving forward. So I think that Kaprizov right now, if I were to pick, I just picked at the 1 month mark. I don't vote for this award, but I have Kaprizov number 1 right now. He deserves it. The Wild are in the playoff mix. They look a lot better. He's, they missed the playoffs last year. If he continues to carry them through some of the holes on that roster the rest of the way, like, I feel like he could be a slam dunk. It's never for sure, because McDavid, like, look at him, right? Missed a little time because of injury, 4 points last night. He'll get back into the conversation for sure. But Kaprizov is a beast out there right now.
Yeah, it looks good there, especially in the odds market. A lot of big names listed there. If you love the Oilers, who are the favorites right now to win the Stanley Cup, Draisaitl at a 35-1 price. And also, you take a look at Connor McDavid at a 5-1 price. We got some more answers that we need out of Pete Jensen, which includes, who's the best rookie? He resides in Philadelphia, but the question of him playing on a night-to-night basis is another one. Pete will be back with us right here on the Early Line.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Told me I missed you. Pick at your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Fire and Ice. We got it right here on the early line. It's Dubsy, it's Donnie, it's Pete Jensen having some fun talking some NHL action, setting the table for the expectations for the remaining parts of the season. If we are looking at the rookie chase here in Philadelphia, we love this. Matvei Michkov waited for him to come over. He's finally here, sort of butting heads with Tortorella. He was the NHL Rookie of the Month. Finally comes back there with a 2-game layoff, puts up a couple points. But if we are talking about the Calder Cup, Michkov, Stankoven, Celebrini, where does it stand right now, Pete, in your eyes?
Well, my preseason pick on NHL.com was Stankoven. He just plays for the safest offense. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things where he's going to see an elevated role over the course of the year, regardless of who he's playing with. I don't worry about him. With the Flyers and the Sharks, they're rebuilding. I think the Flyers are a little bit more accelerated than them, but even Philly's had some issues early on in the season. They haven't been quite as good as I thought they were last year with, being on the verge of the playoffs for most of the season and then bowing out the last day of the season. So I worry about that Tortorella dynamic a little bit, but probably over time, Michkov has a case over these two other guys to be at another level. Celebrini is there with Will Smith in San Jose. He's actually been really good per game, missed a lot of time because of injuries, only played like 4 or 5 games so far this year. So been very productive, and he'll get back into the race over time, but I would lean with Stankoven, just like overall the shot volume, the point per game so far, really impressive, and we got a glimpse of him last year even in the playoffs, so we know he's the real deal.
Pete, taking a look at some of the awards the Vezina handed out on the yearly best shot stopper, best goaltender between the pipes once it's all said and done, and no surprises, Connor Hellebuck has had a fantastic start to the year there with the Jets, a 12-1 win and loss. Who's been the standout between the pipes for you? Maybe a name worth watching with a bit of value if it's not Connor.
Yeah, I think we've seen some really slow starts for teams like Nashville and Boston. And Swayman, right, he had all the conversation about him going into the season, and we expected a ton out of him, got the late start in training camp before he got his contract done. A lot of drama there, negative storylines and stuff like that. So he's been disappointing. I was picking UC Saros because Nashville was so impressive in the offseason, adding Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea onto an already loaded offense. But that offense, although they've been good in shot attempts percentage, top 10 in the league, they just, I guess they have too many shooters. They don't have enough playmakers on that roster. So I'm disappointed in the goal support that Saros has received so far. out of those two, I would say Saros, if Nashville turns it around, makes the playoffs, he has that like workhorse, shutout, dynamic, any given night where he could get back into the race. But right now, and even after the Rangers-Jets game last night, I mean, it's hands down Connor Hellebuck right now. As I mentioned earlier, he was the the Vezina winner last year, won it a couple years before in 2020, going for number 3 this year, going for back-to-back Vezinas, which hasn't been done since Marty Brodeur, I believe, in the earlier 2000s. So right now, unless the Jets really, come back down to earth and cool off here, it's looking like it's going to be Hellebuck again, even compared to the other greats like Shesterkin and Sergei Bobrovsky and guys like that.
Let's get to some action tonight on the ice, Pete. We'll take a look at Detroit and Pittsburgh tonight. If we look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, the odds opened up as a minus 134 favorite, up to minus 140 for Pittsburgh tonight. Red Wings coming into the season, or expectations, we'll see how they finish. 6-7 right now. The Penguins, 6-9 right now. What are the expectations tonight between Detroit and Pittsburgh for you, Pete?
These two teams are so Jekyll and Hyde right now. Pittsburgh's had some ugly losses this season. They really got embarrassed the other day by Dallas, who I mentioned is really one of the deepest, if not the single deepest team in the entire league. They can't hang with teams like that anymore. They can hang, though, with the Detroit Red Wings, who are very topsy-turvy. They almost made the playoffs last year, but had a pretty bad last couple of weeks of the season. I can't really fully trust Detroit at this point in time to make the playoffs. So, yeah, Pittsburgh, I think, is in a good bounce back spot here. They still have, Crosby and Malkin have been playing a lot of the season so far on the same line, which is not something that we've seen in years past. The third wheel on that line is Rickard Rakell, who's been productive, has a good shot volume. So maybe by association to Crosby and Malkin, you look at Rickard Rakell in the props market and stuff like that for goals or shots on goal any given night.
Pete, also coming up for the Wednesday afternoon slate, the Maple Leafs going across to Washington to take on Ovi in the Capitals. Expected to be a close one. Both teams been playing some really strong hockey. But do the Maple Leafs have that offense and that juice in trying to go with Ovechkin and the Capitals, who seem to be putting up a lot of goals?
Yeah, keep an eye on whether Austin Matthews plays in this game. He's missed the last number of games here, and a bad loss for Toronto against the Ottawa Senators, who are a non-playoff team, you would say, but can catch you by surprise any given night. So wouldn't be surprised to see Toronto bounce back here, even without Matthews. They've played pretty well, generally speaking, whether it was last postseason without Matthews for a couple of games. Remember, they still rallied and forced Game 7 against the Bruins without Matthews. So they're capable at that plus number to compete in that game, even though the Capitals have been hot and stuff like that. I feel like Toronto still has, like, probably other than Ovi, the 4 or 5 best players on both ends of the ice in that game.
A couple other games on the card tonight, Pete. Hurricanes and the Hockey Club, Kings, Avalanche, Golden Knights, and the Ducks. Any looks from those 3 games, or which one's your favorite game?
Hurricanes Utah is interesting. I mentioned Utah's dealing with injuries to a couple of key defensemen. Sean Dursey out for 4+ months, and they got Sergachev in the offseason. He's been kind of like a man on an island so far because John Marino, who came over that same day, also is injured for 4+ months. So they're reeling a little bit since a hot start to the season. Carolina, I would expect them to probably win that game. Their offense is rolling right now in the props market. Look at guys like Jack Roslovic, Martin Necas. These guys have been some of the most productive players in the entire NHL over the past 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and nobody really seems to be talking about them. Carolina is also a very good road team.
He's Pete Jensen. That's our NHL guy right here on the SportsGrid Network. Thanks, Pete. Catch him at NHL.com for all the latest. We'll be right back here on the early line next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The weather is chilly here on the East Coast today, but we're about to get heated up once more because golf is in the forecast. It's Donnie and Stubbs, and now we welcome in Keith Stewart, our resident PGA professional right here on the SportsGrid Network. Keith, how's the weather treating you? How's the golf game right now?
You know what? My golf game is absolutely impeccable because the clubs are in my closet. I'm up here in the Northeast and I'm not playing at all. But you know what? The boys are out there in Bermuda. They're doing a bit of island hopping to end the season. It's the penultimate event. We've got 2 to go. And the top 125 are fighting for their career lives to get that 2025 tour card. Let's get into it.
How about that? Well, let's start here. The Butterfield Bermuda Championship here, and nicer weather, much nicer than me sitting here in New Jersey, but a lot of names that we're not familiar with. Keith, we'll get there in just a few moments, but as always, I like to get the course set up here. We're taking a look at about 6,800 yards, the Port Royal Golf Course. What are the expectations, and how should this course play out this weekend?
Well, you know, Donnie, I got to correct you there for a second. I know Bermuda, the mid-ocean, and we start to think about those shorts and the pink sands, but these guys, they have a brutal week coming. It is going to blow 30 miles an hour out there on the island, and the Bermuda Triangle is in full play. Friday night into Saturday morning, we're looking at a rainstorm that's coming through, and these guys are going to have some challenging conditions. And that goes back to the course here, Port Royal Golf Course. I mean, it's par 71, 6,800 yards. It should be pitch and putt for these guys. And last year, Camilo Villegas wins at 24 under par. We also had Brendan Todd win in the first edition 5 years ago at 24 under par. But we've had guys win at 15 under par too, and it's going to be one of those years. The over-under in Vegas is only 13.5 under par or for the winning score. The weather is going to be an issue this week, and already I'm favoring the PM/AM wave. But you know what? Don't lock in those lineups till you get the last forecast you can. And one other PSA I'll give you is that, you know what? Bermuda's an hour ahead of the East Coast. So don't be late tomorrow morning or tonight when you put those lineups in. Now, when you start talking about the golf course, it's a positional paradise. That's for sure. A lot of par fours, under 400 yards. We need great wedge approach players that can control their trajectory. Got to keep the ball low there. It's going to be windy, and we've got a lot of terrain changes. You got to remember, Bermuda is the tip of a volcano. It's a mountain out in the middle of the ocean. It is uneven territory, and these guys are going to be hitting downhill, uphill with wedges in their hands. Got to control trajectory, got to control spin, and it's Bermuda. So we're talking Bermuda grass, and you've got to be a great Bermuda grass putter.
And Keith, taking a look at past winners, it's going to go a long way in telling us who could win this tournament. It feels like the small ball, keeping in play, and the ball strikers find the center of the club face can absolutely get it done. But at the top of the board, We've got Maverick McNeely, who I've been waiting for a couple of seasons now. You've got Seamus Power, who's fantastic in the win, and Mac Hughes. Who's the standout for you at top of the odds board?
Well, I tell you what, we've all been waiting for Mav McNeely for a long time. You know, the Stanford standout, he should have won probably multiple times already out on tour, and he hasn't crossed the finish line. So that gives me pause. The next favorite is Seamus Power. Now, Seamus, career-wise, probably the best strokes gained player in the field here in Bermuda. He won in 2022, and he plays great at places like Pebble Beach, where are also wind affected. I love his wedge game, and I love his ability to score being from Ireland. You've got Mac Hughes. Now, Mac Hughes hasn't played in a month or so. We saw him at the President's Cup, but guess what? He was 4th at the Pro Tour in the fall, and he was 8th at the Sanderson. The guy shows up twice with 2 top 8s. We've got to pay attention to him. Now, he gets a little wild off the tee, and that might hurt him, but he's probably the best putter in the field. And then one other guy, Ben Griffin. And this is going to lead me into my early lines, which I know Donnie loves on a Wednesday morning. Ben Bermuda Griffin. This kid, he was the 54-hole leader the year that Seamus Power won in 2022. He's had a very strong fall. He's got 3 top 25s in his last 4 starts. He's 2nd in the field in Bermuda grass putting, and he's top 15 on approach. Here's a kid that we really need to pay attention to. Little runner-up back in Canada, similar style golf course, Hamilton Golf and Country Club. I love the comp, and I love Ben Griffin this week at plus 2,000. One other player, Andrew Putnam, is a guy to keep your eye on. Plus 3,500, a little further down the board. 2nd in the field on approach. I'm stressing approach, guys. You got 3 par 3s, 200 yards. 2 of them are 235. The 16th hole, Donnie, 235, Atlantic Ocean to your left, and a mountain to the right. I mean, you've got no place to go. You've got to be a great approach player, and Putnam can do it. He's also a very strong putter on Bermuda. There's 2 guys, early leans on the early line. I kept my eye on.
Love it here. Keith, we only have a couple seconds left here. What's next for the PGA Tour? What's the next big event we got to get into?
Well, here's the thing. You got to be in the top 125 to get your card for next year. Ranked between 115 and 135. 19 of those 20 guys are here trying to secure their card. 1 week, next week, I'll be down in Sea Island to wrap the whole season up with you boys.
Oh, pretty soon we'll be talking Masters golf. It happens quickly here, but trying to get warmed up in Bermuda. He's Keith Stewart. He's our professional, and we love it. We'll see him next week. Golfing. It's where it's at right here on the grid. Hour number 3 next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.